were allowed to execute the entire operation. In 1 month, we took back terrain larger than Belgium from Bokoharam. We were not allowed to finish because it came at a time when governments were in the process of changing. I think President Jonathan's government possibly saw the entire Bokoharam contract, if we call it that, almost as a last gasp in order to regain popularity. The incoming president, President Buhari, was heavily supported by a foreign government, and one of the first missions was to terminate our contract.
Could you name that foreign government?
Yes, we were told it was the United States, and they had actually funded President Buhari's campaign. The campaign manager for President Buhari came from the US, and I'm not saying that the United States is bad. I understand foreign interests, but I would have thought that a threat such as Boko Haram on the integrity of the state of Nigeria ought to be actually a priority. It wasn't.
African leaders, I sell out. I give up, guys. Just listen to this video, guys. Listen first. Listen first.
Would you walk us through the Boko Haram offensive?
Boko Haram offensive, we were a subcontractor. There was a prime contractor appointed that appointed us as a subcontractor. Our initial aim was not Boko Haram per se, but it was to rescue the Chibok girls. They were the girls that had been kidnapped, and where the Western response was #SaveTheGirls. That type of nonsense does not save girls. Unfortunately, these girls became victims of a situation where the security had broken down in a specific area. They were kidnapped, and that was the first mission, rescue the Chibok girls. We then did a selection process of the Nigerian soldiers. The soldiers were retained after the election process, were then trained in a very specific way to conduct a hostage rescue operation, and that requires a very specific type of person. However, approximately 5 or 6 weeks into the training of the hostage rescue team, we were asked to change our mission, and that mission was to go to a town called Maiduguri in northeast Nigeria that had come under severe threat of Boko Haram. We then rapidly had to transition what we were doing and suddenly train a very offensive force with a minimum of equipment, and we rushed to Maiduguri. We met with the 7th Infantry Division commander. We finally understood the pressures he was under, and our suggestion was to him that this force we had trained, which we named the 72nd Mobile Strike Force, would actually spearhead the division, and that is precisely what we did. The operation was in 3 phases. The first phase was to actually cut a dividing line across northeastern Nigeria and isolate Boko Haram into 2 defined areas, and then mop up one area in the south was the start, and after that was done, mop up in the north. The division would follow behind occupied terrain. We would train the division in situ in defensive positions, etc., but we were never allowed to execute the entire operation. So in 1 month, we took back terrain larger than Belgium from Boko Haram. We were not allowed to finish because it came at a time when governments were in the process of changing. I think President Jonathan's government possibly saw the entire Boko Haram contract, if we call it that, almost as a last gasp in order to regain popularity. The incoming president, President Buhari, was heavily supported by a foreign government, and one of the first missions was to terminate our contract.
Could you name that foreign government?
Yes, we were told it was the United States, and they had actually funded President Buhari's campaign. The campaign manager for President Buhari came from the US. I'm not saying that the United States is bad. I understand foreign interests, but I would have thought that a threat such as Boko Haram on the integrity of the state of Nigeria ought to be actually a priority. It wasn't.
Why do you think the US would intervene to abort such operation?
Again, I can't answer that. I think that the US can answer, but what I've come to realize, that is when a government's foreign interests clash with the state's own domestic interests, conflict is bound to ensue. And those conflicts usually just continue with no end. And we can look at all the conflicts in Africa where foreign forces have come in, they've prolonged those conflicts, they haven't ended those conflicts. And the amount of money and manpower and equipment thrown at those conflicts says to me that something is wrong if no end result is achieved. And surely that end result should be to end the conflict and establish a basis for negotiations, come to an agreement, and then re-establish governance. But that's not what's happening in Africa.
If you are a Nigerian and you don't know your problem by now, I'm sorry I can't help you. There's a common denominator. Now, something happened in 2015. President Muhammadu Buhari won election and some Nigerians were celebrating. They kicked out Goodluck Jonathan. He was coming to tackle corruption and so on and so forth. But from the video we have just watched, you see clearly that even before Jonathan left power, there was this serious push by the military and the foreign contractors they brought in, that they were pushing Bokoharam. They were pushing them to a point where they could have easily defeated them. But that didn't happen. Immediately Buhari took over power, he terminated the appointment of those contractors and told them to stop fighting Boko Haram. So it is a political tool used by politicians basically to win election, to stay in power, and to get an excuse for these foreign powers to remain on our continent. Before I talk about the common denominator that is bedeviling and sucking the blood of Africans, I want to go back to something quickly. If you listen to that video, they said that some foreign powers sponsored Buhari's election and it came from the United States of America. But there's something that adds up to that. It's because if you look at that 2015 election, Tinubu was there. Tinubu was the main financier. He was the backbone behind Muhammadu Buhari's election. And he brought in some foreign guys. I mean, if you look at the video, they sat down, there were some foreign multinational corporation heads, and there was Bill Gates. He was there. In this 2023 election, Bill Gates also came with Dangote and visited Tinubu after he won election. That means there's a force behind it, what is happening in Borno and in Nigeria today that we don't understand. And the fact that Tinubu is quick to jump on Niger, which is our neighboring country, which are our brothers, to invade them using the guise of ECOWAS. The fact that so many other countries have stepped back and said they are not interested in it, including countries like Benin, Togo, Ghana. What is the purpose of trying to invade Niger? Now I know why. So the common denominator is the current guy in power. He has a lot of connections in Washington and in France. And these people have been pushing him and his friends to bleed Nigeria dry, to cause all these conflicts in Nigeria, to sponsor these people that are bedeviling us. And the fact that after Buhari won the election, he terminated the appointment of the foreign contractors that were pushing Boko Haram and almost terminated them because he got orders from America. How come is it that only in the places where you have Californium, whether you have gold, whether you have uranium, where you have all these juicy mineral resources in the northeast, that's where the insurgency is happening? Have you asked yourself that question before? Same thing is applicable to Niger. The Nigerian army complained that why they removed Bazoum was that they were going after the insurgents, and Bazoum called them that he had a call from Paris to stop the operation and to stop pursuing the bandits. And we call them, they are here to fight terrorists, they are here to fight insurgency. Under the guise of that, they're loading a lot of weapons and give to these people. How come we are having the same problem in places where you have these rare earth materials? So the same denominator that happened in 2015, the same interest group are also pushing this current government. So there are some forces behind this government that were also behind the government in 2015 that have wrecked Nigeria down. And if you don't know the problem by now, I'm sorry I cannot help you. And that is why they are quick to call him and tell him, Mr. President, we are going to help you with whatever you need. Invade them, bomb them and kill them. And if Tinubu does that, it will go down in history. His children are still alive. We will live with them in this country. And most of them will, of course, will run to the United States to go and stay with the slave masters. Go to London to go and stay with their slave masters. So the reality is that there's a solution to the problem of insurgency on the continent of Africa, but some foreign forces are behind it that don't want to see it end, particularly in the Sahel, particularly in northern Nigeria and around the Lake Chad region. Why? Because the NGOs dressed in army fatigues are there, taking out resources, doing surveillance, looking for what they can take. And that is why they don't want this conflict to end. I mean, if you listen to that comment and what he said, I was so shocked because Eben was one of the founding fathers of private military companies in South Africa, even around the world. Somebody that fought in Angola, somebody that fought in Mozambique. He has been hired in different places to put an end to conflict, even in Sierra Leone. And the government of Jonathan only hired him towards the end of his administration because he wanted re-election. And if you watch that period living in Nigeria, you see that at that point, the rate of insurgency went down by 80%. The kidnappings went down. Everything went down because it was a lead-up to election. But the West no longer liked Jonathan because he was not really acting, in their best interest. He was going after Bokoharam and they didn't like him. They even denied selling Nigerian arms using the Leahy Law. Colonization have ended. You took us as slaves, yet you will not leave us alone. You continue to steal from us and bleed us dry and shoot at us in an idea of bombing democracy into us. The northeast of Nigeria today is unstable. The areas around the Lake Chad region, in Chad, in Cameroon, in Nigeria is unstable. In Niger, in the areas around Mali, Burkina Faso, and in the southwestern part of Niger is unstable. They are using different groups that have their own national agenda, like the Tuaregs, the Tubu people, and other jihadists and bandits that they've armed from Libya, brought them down. And recently, when the Nigerian junta asked them to leave, they went to prisons and released thousands of jihadists to go after the Nigerian junta, the Nigerian government. Something is not adding up. Is it that we are not seeing it, or we are seeing it but nobody is speaking about it? The governments are complicit in it, and that's why they can't say anything. And something shocked me recently, because we are talking about oil theft. A vessel that stole oil from Nigeria was caught recently, and they set it ablaze, and they say it's order from above. It cannot be just the military making that decision. It's coming from the very top. And these people have connection with their foreign partners abroad that are coming and stealing our oil. And nobody's saying anything. Nobody can confront them because they are in the position of power. They can do anything they want to do. It is coming from the very top. Now I believe what people have been saying, that if the leadership at the very top want to put an end to oil theft, to terrorism, they can actually do it. They know the secret, but because they are complicit, because they know that these Western powers have debt on them, they have their dossier, they have their file, and everything is inside, they keep their mouth shut. I'm aghast with the fact that we have a government, but the government was not elected by us. The government does not answer to us. The government is answerable to the powers in Paris and in Washington DC and in London. And we are just here claiming to be electorates, voting and wasting our time during the election. And the Nigerian junta, this young officer said enough is enough, and they are threatening them with violence, using our own president, using a brother to fight another brother because of money, because of what they stole from us, and they are hiding abroad because they know that these guys have debt on them. This is the reality. Let no other person tell you anything. This is the reality of international politics. It is dirty, it is murky, it is dangerous, and if you speak up against it, they silence you. That is why everybody is afraid. And they are trying to push these young guys to a war, to an unjust war, just to go there and be shot at, and to kill other people, to kill their brothers, because they want to make their bosses in Washington DC happy. Kamala Harris was so quick to jump and call Tinubu. This is the same woman that went to Ghana and was preaching LGBTQ. I'm done with all these people. Kamala Harris, Barack Obama. It's crazy. Nobody wants to tell you the truth. Come to Nigeria and cause problem in northeast Nigeria. And that is why they want to open another front, so that they can bring a military base and install in Nigeria. And this is the ultimate goal, to properly install a military base on the territory of Nigeria. And they are trying to use President Tinubu to do it. He knows it. They are not using him. He understands it, and he's doing their bidding on behalf of the United States.